And again, welcome everybody to our Minnesota Outdoor Skills and Stewardship Series program. We got Scott Mockington with us today. He's our area supervisor out in Hutchinson. He's also a co-chair of the Catfish Technical Committee. So he's an avid angler. I actually met Scott. He's a heck of a guy, good dad to a couple of great kids, and a great mentor. I met him down in Eagle Bluff several years ago at a trout camp down there. As he came in to help mentor some new trout anglers. So it's been several years, but I'm glad to see you again. We've been kind of slow here the last few years, of course, but glad to have you back, Scott, and welcome to the program. Look forward to your presentation.
All right, thanks a lot, Benji. Thanks for the introduction. We'll get started. I'm glad to have so many people participating that are curious, maybe know a little bit, want to learn a little bit more about catfish angling. Certainly never imagined in my younger years I'd describe myself as a catfish angler or be identified as a catfish angler, but really it's something that has grown on me, and it's something that you take advantage of the opportunities that are in your backyard. And I am located in New Prague, Minnesota. That's where I call home, and I've got the Minnesota and the Mississippi within anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour away. The St. Croix is not too much further, and occasionally make my way up to the Red River. So do a fair bit of fishing for about everything, but in the summers I like to put my time in to catfish angling. So to start, let's talk about why catfish. Well, I'll lead with the first reason. They're very underutilized. As we look at the Department of Natural Resources information that we have at hand from angler surveys, from creels, from surveys that we send out to licensed buyers that are in our database, and we ask them how frequently they are targeting catfish or how many days they go catfishing in a year. We know from that data, as well as angler surveys that are done on the large river systems, that we don't get a lot of people that are targeting them. We also can see that they're relatively unexploited or underexploited. We don't see a lot of fishing pressure or harvest. So you have great opportunities since they're so underutilized. Another reason I would give is that the equipment is very inexpensive. If you're just breaking into catfishing, you don't need to spend a lot of money on catfish equipment. A number of rods that I've picked up at factory outlet stores. I've even just a basic beginning catfish rod. The first one that I bought probably around 15 years ago was a Berkley glow stick, if you need to know the name. And at the time, I believe they retailed for $25 or $30. They're a little more expensive now, but the point is still the same. The equipment is very inexpensive. I've even made a habit of going onto eBay to purchase used saltwater level wind reels, which are very inexpensive, and as long as they're working properly, are great for catfish. We have excellent access to catfish waters in Minnesota. While this talk today is going to focus on river angling, just about there's a good chunk of lakes in the state that have catfish, channel catfish specifically, and then our major river systems have flathead catfish and channel catfish. So for flatheads, we have them in the St. Croix, the Minnesota, the Mississippi, and then for channels, we have them in those river systems, most of the other tributaries, and they're very well distributed from southwest to northeast, with the exception of very few catfish in north central and northeastern Minnesota. And along those lines with access, I'll just add, you can find some wonderful publications that we'll talk about at the end of this presentation on where you can launch boats or where you can shore fish from. So access is very good in Minnesota. They're also a great tasting fish. We'll talk about that a little bit for the respective species, but they're very good eating. And then we have world-class opportunities in this state. There's unbelievable channel catfishing in the Red River of the North on our border in northwest Minnesota, and there's exceptional flathead fishing, even though we are on the northern edge of the Flathead Catfish's range. And what I like to really sell people on is you're likely to catch the biggest fish of the year or possibly during your lifetime while you're catfishing. You know, if you're going out bass fishing, you're going to get pretty excited by a 3 or 4 pound bass. If you go out walleye fishing, a 5, 6, 7 pound walleye is going to excite you. Those are small in the world of flathead catfish and mediocre in the world of channel catfish. These fish attain some very large sizes, so it doesn't take a lot of effort and you catch some very large fish. All right, so to kick things off, I want to talk about the differences between the two species that you're going to target in Minnesota, and that is flathead catfish and channel catfish. There's 24 to 29. I'm just going to go through the differences real quick here. There's 24 to 29 rays, and I'll talk about what those rays are in the anal fin right here on a flathead catfish. Over here, there's 30 or so on a channel catfish. You can also look at the anal fin and see how much kind of longer it is on a channel catfish. And then just there's more of a rounded edge on a flathead catfish. Other distinct differences here, you've got a flat tail or caudal fin, and on a channel catfish, you have a forked tail. And while the artistic rendering here may not show it all that clearly, a flathead catfish has this great big huge mouth. Jaws I describe as being like a suitcase handle, versus a channel catfish, the mouth is a lot smaller. And the head is just so big and flattened on a flathead catfish, like the name implies. And really that just these basic differences in anatomy sort of describe a lot about diet and habitat. They give you some clues about where you're going to find these fish, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So real beautiful fish as far as coloration. You can kind of see the differences, a slate gray or even dark blue or brown on a channel, kind of an olive green, mottled brown, even highlighter yellow sometimes on flathead catfish. So we'll go back and break down those two different species. For flathead catfish, they are a top-level predator. They are not a scavenger. I think a lot of folks who are new to catfishing, maybe they grew up fishing for bullheads, or they see catfish and they associate them with, oh, they're a bottom feeder. They're gonna suck up whatever's on the bottom of the lake or river. They don't have a lot of value as a fish species. This flathead catfish is a top-level predator. It is the top of the food chain in our large river systems. And you are going to fish these with live bait. That comes as a surprise to a lot of people. It is not a scavenger. As I mentioned earlier, this is the second largest fish in Minnesota. Our largest fish is, of course, the lake sturgeon, very long-lived species that attains large sizes, distribution in the Mississippi, now being recovered in the Minnesota, being recovered in some other lake systems, and of course still recovering in the St. Louis River and the Rainy River. But for our flathead catfish, I described that earlier, Minnesota, Mississippi, St. Croix. Our state record is a 70-pound fish from the St. Croix River. So you just by default do manage to get into some very large fish. We'll talk. The flathead catfish does have pulsed daily and seasonal activity. We'll talk a little bit here in a couple of slides about what that seasonal activity looks like, but what you should know on the daily side of things is they're crepuscular, basically a fancy term for being active at twilight. That seems to be when they're most active, at dawn and dusk. However, they are active day and night, and if I had to put more emphasis on daytime versus nighttime, I would definitely say more active at night. And again, I think that's because a lot of other fish are active during the day and kind of don't move around quite as much and sort of just hang out at night. This is the chance for the flathead catfish to go out and forage. So a crepuscular fish, you can catch it at any time during the day, but certainly you see a little more activity out of them at night. They really have impressive suction feeding, and I think this is part of the appeal of being a flathead catfish angler. We think about fish that have large mouths as being able to open their mouth, suck a bunch of water in, and by displacement, pull in their prey item and swallow it whole. And that happens in a great big thump. So when we're talking about flathead catfish, that's the most impressive thing. Really, what a lot of us cat anglers will dream about on warm on summer nights or even in the off season is hearing that thump. You'll have a bait that's in the water, a live bait, and all of a sudden there'll be a massive thump, And what you're actually hearing is the jaws of that fish opening up, sucking the bait into its mouth, and the fish sometimes crushing and then swallowing the prey item. So very impressive suction feeding. And as we were talking about earlier, describing the the morphology of this fish, how it's shaped. Form fits function, an old line that's repeated in biology classes. This is a fish that's built for power, not for endurance. Very large, heavy body, big square head. It's not meant to win any races or to be uh, be a marathon type of endurance fish. Instead, this is a powerful fish. You're going to get a sturdy, tough battle out of the gate. It's going to try to take you into whatever obstruction it can. But if you can weather the storm for 5-10 minutes and get it topside, then you can get it netted and into the boat. So built for power. I mentioned, the food value on both channel and channel catfish and flathead catfish. Flatheads are really tasty, but they're largely viewed in Minnesota and elsewhere as a trophy fish. I think there's a lot of folks that in some parts of the United States do keep large fish. However, I think from the Department of Natural Resources perspective, as well as the Minnesota Department of Health, you think about contaminants and bioaccumulation. Large predator fish like flathead catfish, species that are long-lived, and we have flathead catfish that we've aged out to as old as 30 years and some that may be older. That's a lot of time for those fish to accumulate heavy metals and other toxins. Uh, you have to be careful, PCBs, mercury, etc. So we do encourage people to eat smaller fish, and typically that's a bit more tender, but has a really white, flaky meat to it, and very tasty, great for fish fries. And another distinction worth noting, some years ago, the flathead catfish does have a closed season. It opens from the 1st of April and runs through November, end of November. So you do get a close season, and that's why it's important to sort of pay attention. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that this is a fish species that will go into a state of torpor, be inactive. That's a very big distinction really to make versus where this fish is in the southern part of its range. This is as far north as flathead catfish venture in the United States, is up into Minnesota. And because we have such cold water up here, these fish will actually go into a state of torpor. They'll gather in small groups behind an obstruction where they can get into a current break, and their metabolism will slow way down. They'll take just 3-4 breaths a minute. See the gills move, they're alive, they're still functioning, but completely disinterested in feeding, just trying to get through the winter. As water warms back up, they'll activate again. And for that very reason, they're in that state of vulnerability where in our previous regulation structure, they could be targeted, they could be removed by folks who could claim to be angling them. You could even hook them in the mouth, conceivably. Again, with a mouth that's similar to a suitcase handle, it's easy to drag a jig and hook them in the mouth. So we do have a closed season. And touching quickly on the bag and length limits, presently there's a 5 fish combined bag of catfish in Minnesota, although we are looking to decouple that bag. It allows you to keep up to 2 flathead catfish, but only one of your catfish may be over 24 inches. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a warm water species. We are at the northern edge of their range. That's probably part of the reason they can't make it up as far. It just gets too cold for them in a lot of places. So you do see them run up the Missouri River to the west, and they can only make it so far there as well because of habitat needs, and one of them being water that's not too terribly cold in a long enough growing season. So again, Minnesota, Mississippi, and St. Croix rivers offer world-class angling for flathead catfish. And I did say I would talk a little bit about movement and habitat use. This is borrowed from our Minnesota River biologist, Tony Sint. It really lays out a nice overview of what the flathead catfish season looks like. Talked about it a little bit here. We talked about that these fish go into torpor. They enter into their overwintering habitat when the water cools off in October or November, and then they're staying in that condition until roughly around 50 degrees Fahrenheit. They're activating, moving out. After the winter is done, you get a huge migration push. We know this, and others know this from documented research. We have a number of tagged flathead catfish in the Minnesota and Mississippi and St. Croix rivers. We have a number of acoustic receivers out there that pick up these tags and help us track these fish. And we've documented some of these fish that stay in winter habitats and then move accordingly. And we've documented 200, 300 miles of movement for some of these fish. Other state agencies have seen even larger migrations. Some of them just erratic nomads, but some annual movements. So this big push moves. These fish are really on the move early in the year. A lot of pre-spawn movement, and then they're settling into where their spawning area will be. They'll take place in the spawn, and that's starting to go right now. Probably a little bit earlier than normal. Usually it's late June. It's probably starting in mid-June now with the warm water temperatures that we're seeing. Some fish will migrate to a late summer habitat. Many are just staying in the same area. And similarly, we had a researcher, Steve Schroyer at the Waterville office, who he and others have done work on post-spawn summer habitat use. And those fish are relegated to a very small area, roughly 2 kilometers that they're hanging out in. I remember accompanying Steve as part of his research. He'd go out with a radio transmitter and you could boat to predictably many of the same snags day to day, week to week. Those flathead catfish really were using the same areas because they had such a well-established home range. So that kind of takes you through the year for a flathead catfish. We'll talk a bit about channel catfish. It's good to kind of make the distinction between the two species. Channel catfish, on the other hand, when compared to flathead catfish, are more scavengers. Later in adulthood, if they attain large enough sizes, they do move to piscivory. They are going to eat more fish. Actually, in the Red River of the North, that's been documented in some diet studies up there. They're really keying in on a fatty, high caloric value forage goldeye. We have goldeye in all of Minnesota's major river systems, but it's particularly they're particularly abundant in the Red River. So they do switch to piscivory. They'll eat a lot of goldeye in the Red River. They'll eat whatever fish they can come across. And as you start fishing live baits, trying to catch flathead catfish on occasion, you will catch some very large channel catfish that have become piscivorous and will take your live bait. And in contrast to those flathead catfish, channel catfish are active year-round. In fact, we have a few different locations in Minnesota that we support winter through the ice angling opportunities for channel catfish. So some on river systems, some on lake systems. So they are active year-round. We do see exceptional abundance at a range of sizes for channel catfish. So you have a nice chance to catch small eating size channel catfish, medium size fish that we like to see that put a bend in your rod. And of course, you can chase trophies on all of our major river systems. And similar to flatheads, I would describe them as crepuscular, active at twilight, but you can catch them day at night. And certainly they're a twinge more active at nighttime. Interestingly, as we look at channel catfish, they're really a swimming tongue. They've got taste buds all over their body, and we do see you do see just from looking at the fish, small beady eyes. They're not relying on sight. They're really relying on taste and olfaction, and that's true with their whiskers or barbels that you see, or like we described earlier, the fact that the skin itself is covered in taste buds. So taste and smell are particularly important, and you'll notice as we go through fishing techniques that anything for a lot of our attempts to catch channel catfish are keying in on their taste and smell. As compared to flathead catfish, channel catfish are really built for endurance. This is a species that you're going to find more in the middle of the river channel. It's used to having to deal with the current, and it is a challenging fighter. I've often said that if you put the fight of a channel catfish into the body of a flathead catfish, you may never catch one. So they do give you a heck of a sporting fight. Like the flathead catfish, they are a very good food fish. They're a great eating fish. We'll keep smaller fish for fish fries. And if you go to a lot of restaurants and you order fish fingers or fish sandwiches, many times what you're actually getting is channel catfish that's been raised in the southeastern United States. So they are a big component of aquaculture, freshwater aquaculture in North America and in southeastern United States. So If it's good enough to eat in the restaurant, certainly we can keep them at small sizes out of wild rivers. With channel catfish, we've got a continuous season, and I mentioned the large bag. You can keep up to 5 fish. So it's a fish that if you really want to have a lot of fish fries, this is a great fish to do so with. And like the flathead catfish, this is a warm water species. Most notably, as we see evidence of climate change, because this is a warm water niche species, we are seeing some statewide range expansion. Just visiting with some of my colleagues in the upper Mississippi River, they're seeing more abundant channel catfish. I know after some flooding in the Aiken area around the Big Sandy Lake complex, there was kind of a dam that burst, and with the flooding condition, I know channel catfish have sort of prospered in that system. I'll have to circle back with that office and check in their next netting assessment if channel catfish have continued to prosper. But we are detecting that and noticing that through regular surveys on lakes and streams that we are picking up channel catfish in places we had not before. They're warm water species, and their range is expanding as our climate changes. So we'll talk now, we'll kind of make a transition into talking about the kinds of gears that are needed for catfishing. And I'm going to give you what I use. You are kind of free to pick and choose what works for you, but I am going to try to put some emphasis on the attributes that you need to be looking for as you're picking up equipment. So on a rod, I would tell you, if you're chasing flathead catfish, to get the best medium heavy or heavy rod with a soft tip that you can afford. I mentioned at the onset that one of the first rods I bought was a Berkley glow stick. Had a nice soft tip that bounced a little bit where I could watch my live bait. That's really what that soft tip is all about. You want to be able to see your live bait transfer its movement through the line back to your rod tip. So at all times you can watch that rod tip. That's a really good tip for folks that are just starting out. The most successful catfish anglers that I know are die-hard rod tip watchers. I mean, as fun as it is to be out on the river and to look around and take in all the wildlife and scenery, or visit with others, or play around on your phone or whatever you might do, the more time you spend watching that rod tip, the more bites you're going to detect. So look for that soft tip on any rods that you purchase. Line is important because we're talking about fish that are living in river systems that tend to be very turbid. And because these are fish species that don't rely on sight for feeding, they're not going to be line shy. You can choose a braided line, and you can do so. You can get something that has high visibility. I prefer 80 to 100 pound test in high visibility. That could be Power Pro, Spider Wire, Berkley Suffix, whatever. It could be Suffix. It could be whatever line you prefer. You can get away with mono line, but or any line really, but really it's just getting that pound test. I just like the idea of using braid because you're fishing in river systems where there's lots and lots of wood, rock, riprap, whatever it might be that you're going to be rubbing that line up against. So the heavier line that you have, the longer it's going to hold up. On the terminal tackle side of things, hook size I think is important. In my personal opinion, I will go as small as 6/0, but prefer to go to 10/0. You can go as large as 12/0. It's a matter of personal preference. You can use a circle hook. If you're not familiar with circle hooks, and we'll talk about these a little bit, circle hooks, like the name implies, the hook is bent into a circle with the point inward facing. The way a circle hook works is the fish takes the live bait, starts to move away with it, the hook turns, and the point catches in the corner of the fish's mouth. It's a great way for when catfishing to let the fish hook themselves. However, if you want the satisfaction of setting the hook, you may want to look for a J hook or just a big, a large hook, just a standard hook. So I've fished a Gamakatsu big river hook for a number of years. There's some other hooks out there that fit the bill as well. And typically, because we're fishing in a river, you'll need to throw out a weight in front of it to kind of keep that bait pinned to the bottom so it's not drifting off. And that's where you kind of learn from experience that you're going to need to have some sinkers. So as little as 1 to 2 ounces may do in smaller streams, but typically 3, 4, 5, or 6 ounce weights are going to be needed to use. You're going to need to use those to kind of keep that bait pinned down, and you can put those on sinker slides or something that's going to allow them to move freely. A lot of times they'll have a clasp on it that you can actually switch out the weights themselves. You can go up or down if your bait's not holding in place. You can go to heavier weights or lighter weights. Switching over to talking about channel catfish. Here again, rod is important. I'm going to tell you with channel catfish, if that's what you're targeting, to step down your equipment just a little bit. You really want to go to about a medium or a medium heavy, and again with a soft tip, and even a little bit softer than the tip that I was describing for a flathead. You know, the flatheads were rods that we'd be using, or we're using that soft tip to transfer the movements of the bait so you can see it. With our channel catfish rods, we're actually not looking for movements from live bait, since we're primarily going to be fishing cut baits or prepared baits. We're just going to be looking and watching that for bites. And the softer the tip, the less resistance the fish feels. They can kind of load up that rod and take a bait. Similarly here, I'm using a high visibility braid. I do have some monofilament setups, and I keep it at that larger size. The only reason that I keep the pound test at a larger size on my line is because most of the places that I'm fishing, if I'm throwing out a cut bait, I have a chance to catch a flathead, and I would rather be over prepared rather than under prepared. So yes, you can get away with a little bit smaller pound test for channel catfish. You could get away with 20, 30, 40 pound test. And then on the terminal tackle side of things, you know, a minimum hook size I would use is maybe a 4/0, but I prefer about an 8/0. Now those are still really big hooks. So just understand, when I'm chasing channel catfish, that's chasing after trophy-sized fish. If you're really wanting to just fill the boat with numbers, or you want to catch some eaters, you could go smaller to 2/0, 3/0, 4/0. And my preference when fishing for channels is to use those circle hooks that I described earlier. I will leave the rod in the holder, a very soft tip on that rod. It loads very easily, and the fish feels minimal resistance until all of a sudden that circle hook has turned and caught in the fish's mouth. And once that rod is doubled over, or a little before, is when I'll actually pull it out of a rod holder and start reeling my fish in. And the same caveat applies, you know, about being careful with your terminal tackle. I'll run about a 12 to 18 inch leader to that hook. The leader is just the same main line. Tie it to a swivel, and that's just giving me a place that's sort of a pivot point or a fulcrum. I can put a weight on there that slides, and same thing applies. You know, put a weight on that's matched up to the flow conditions and the strength of the river and the size of the bait that you're fishing. You can test that. If it starts to slip, you know, you need to put a little bit more weight on. All right, baits. Let's talk about the baits, what we're putting on the end of our hooks here. So for flathead catfish, we want to fish live bait. This is a top level predator, and we want to put live bait in front of its face. And we talked about very large fish. Well, if you want to catch large fish, you need to use large baits. Many bait shops are not going to offer the type of bait that you're going to need to catch these fish. You can't just go get a scoop of fatheads or some shiners, or that sort of thing. So you heard it here first. If you're just breaking into flathead fishing, you're going to get used to going fishing before you go fishing. You have to go out and get your bait. So there's a few different species you can target. You can look for bullheads up to 10 inches. Make sure that you're doing your fishing from non-infested waters. You're going to want to look at the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources list of infested waters and check and see which are non-infested before you go collecting your own bait. And in Minnesota, you can keep bullheads up to 10 inches for bait. You can get white sucker. This is one species you may find in a bait shop. If you go to specialty muskie shops, they may have some large muskie suckers available. White suckers are the most popular, but you can sometimes also catch red horse. Creek chubs. If you're going to any fast-moving warm water streams, many places you'll be able to find creek chubs. A lot of times they're right at bridge crossings or culvert crossings. They're hanging out in deep pools. If you stop at enough places and put a night crawler underneath the bobber on a little basic hook or jig, you can catch creek chubs. Frogs. You can go out and catch frogs as live bait. Occasionally flatheads will take those. Salamanders, I've used them once or twice opportunistically. They will take salamanders. And then similarly, you can throw out cut bait. You can use those same suckers as big chunks of cut bait. You can use the chubs as well. I would encourage you, when we're thinking about partitioning and cutting up cut bait, whether it's for channel catfish or flatheads, try to get a piece that's 1.5 to 2 inches long. Just try to imagine what's going to appeal to those fish, what's going to smell the best, and what's going to fit into the size of their mouth, whether it's channels or flatheads. All right, for bait on the channel catfish side. So we mentioned earlier, as these fish get larger, they do become piscivorous. So you can throw live bait out to catch channel catfish. Bullheads work especially well. Chubs, frogs. I put frogs in all caps. That's a really big component late in the summer, early in the fall. A lot of frogs are migrating to rivers, to wetted water bodies where they're going to start to make their winter migration, burrow down into the substrate for the year. There's quite a feeding binge that happens on frogs, so you can time it just right, collect your own frogs and use them for bait. Uh, you can have dynamite catfishing with frogs. And if you're in a pinch and can't get any bait, you can throw out night crawlers as well. I have caught a few channel catfish as well as flathead catfish, if you can believe it, on plain old night crawlers. Cut bait. This is probably the primary way that many of us are fishing, and it's, again, you're targeting medium to larger size fish. You're putting out pieces of cut sucker, cut chub. And the other thing that's worth talking about with channel catfish are prepared baits. This is where you're likely to get small to medium sized fish, maybe occasionally some large size fish. So stink bait. Within the fishing industry, some have started to call it punch bait, so you don't have the same kind of idea of it being a stinky bait, but it is a smelly bait. You open something up, it's made with cheese or blood or fish oil. Sometimes it's fermented. It tends to have a pretty strong odor. That is what attracts the fish to it. It makes it somewhat unpleasant. So one of the tips you can do if you're fishing prepared baits, stink bait in particular, is when you're leaving the river, go pull a couple of twigs. Maybe they've fallen off of a tree, or you cut some live twigs off. That's what you're going to use to mash up and stir up your stink bait. You can put a little menhaden oil or fish oil in it to kind of loosen it up a little bit, and that's also acts as an attractant. So stink bait or punch bait. They call it punch bait because a lot of times you're taking a small open kind of mesh hollow cylinder or a rubber worm that's ribbed on the side, and those crevices are where that bait is going to adhere to it. And hidden in that prepared bait is going to be a hook, a treble hook or a single hook. So they'll punch it down into the stink bait to get it to coat that bait or lure that you're putting out there. So that's where that name punch bait comes from. As corny as it sounds, you want to make it simple, go run to your grocery store. There's a lot of things at your grocery store that you can pick up that make excellent bait. Hot dogs is one in a pinch. You can also pick up cooked shrimp. You can also pick up at a lot of grocery stores packages of beef or chicken liver. I know a lot of folks have used that, and I have as well early on in your catfishing career. It's easy to get, and it does work particularly well. It's got a pretty strong smell to it, so you will see a lot of channel catfish going for some of those prepared baits, hot dogs, cooked shrimp, or good old standby liver. We'll talk a little bit here about finding the two different fish species. In this case, we'll talk a little bit about flathead catfish. And remember, I talked a little bit about how there's these morphology differences in the shape of the fish. A lot of that's going to tell us or be a clue for us on where we're going to find these fish. So this applies to folks that are fishing in boats and to folks that are fishing from shore. It's all about getting out there and reading the water. We'll give you a few examples of what I mean here in just a minute. So year-round locations where we're going to find where we're going to find flathead catfish. Backwater inlets and outlets. We see a lot of places that water moves in and out, particularly on the Mississippi, but really on any major river system. Any of these inlets or outlets, they go to marinas, they go into backwaters. These are places that are travel corridors for flathead catfish and places they'll go to find their prey. It's out of the main channel, it's out of the main current. It's a good place for them to find something to eat on. Back eddies. So if you're looking at this photo, I'll just touch on it quickly. You can kind of see the flow line right here. And what you're seeing is all this scum and foam. And that's telling you exactly what the river current is doing. It's kind of running downstream, but what you're seeing here is it's hitting a point where it's actually eddying backwards. It's creating a big swirl right over here. And sometimes these locations in the slack water and adjacent to them on these back eddies are great places to find flathead catfish. Reading water as a catfish angler is all about reading those current seams and trying to find slack water areas to fish. All right. The current, so when we talk about reading that water, you're going to find those current seams. I think the best advice I can give you on the current seams for flatheads is to fish on the slow side of the current seam. Again, because this is a fish that's big, blocky head, thick body, doesn't want to fight a lot of current. It's going to be on the slow side of the current seams, waiting on the edge of that conveyor belt to send some food down or to send an unwilling fish right in front of its face. Snags are another great place. But again, it's all about reading the water. Is there a lot of flow going into the snag, or is it somewhat slack? Sometimes snags get deposited within the current, within the main channel. Other times they get deposited on off-channel areas. So you kind of have to pick and choose. You know, there's no right or wrong way to fish a snag, but a lot of times we'll fish upstream and cast back to the snag, or we may anchor on the back side of the snag and fish down to it. A lot of folks use if you're a boat angler, you can use an old welding clamp. You can use what's called a brush grabber by some of the companies that sell them. And instead of having to throw your anchor down into that tangle of mess where you might lose it, you just clamp up on the side of it, and then you can fish directly down or next to. With modern sonar technology, you can kind of get the lay of the land and see how gnarly the snag looks. If there's some open spots you can throw a bait in front of, these are the areas that catfish are hanging out in, particularly flathead catfish. So learning to read snags, learning to fish them effectively is going to be a big part of your plan. Oxbow cutoffs are another one. So if we think about major river systems, they're always moving, they're always changing, they're going through lateral migration. They're moving and they're cutting off meanders. So if you can imagine those S-shaped curved meanders that occur on a river, eventually over time a flood happens, we get really strong currents, and they start beating up on an outside bank. They break through and they just move downstream. They all of a sudden cut off one of the meanders. That meander that gets cut off ends up being called an oxbow, and that usually doesn't get cut off completely. Meaning it doesn't, close up like a wound. There's still going to be an open channel to a slack water area. So those oxbow cutoffs are great places to look for flathead catfish. And another real simple one that's very popular with our bank fishermen are bridge pilings. Again, we're looking for a place that's breaking the current. So when I look at this photo of a bridge crossing, we have the main channels running right here where the deepest water is. That's a pretty strong current for a flathead, but if they tuck in on the backside, you see there's a little bit of wood that's accumulated on it, creating a snag. You've got a nice spot for that fish to kind of hang out. So throwing back into the backsides of bridge pilings, even the front sides to draw them out is a good idea. And then you can even fish the other side over here. It looks to be a little bit flat, maybe a little too flat, but in a higher water situation, this is going to be a low flow area, kind of a shallow flat. And then there's going to be, minimal current on the backside here. So you will see some flatheads that are going to start moving into areas like this, and they're great places to pick up a fish right around bridge pilings. All right, I'm gonna get my pointer off. All right, sharp bends. Sharp bends are usually where pool habitat begins. So you can fish the tops and bottoms of pools, but sharp bends mean kind of the main channel may swing from one side to the other, but those places where sandbars form on the top side or back side of a sandbar on a sharp bend can be a great place to fish. Sometimes wood gets accumulated there. You're near pool habitat. Those sharp bends in the rivers are good places to look for flatheads. Well, continuing with locations, I think there's some seasonal locations that are important. Early in the season, I would say creek mouths. And I really focus on early season Again, because that's the time of year we're getting precipitation, we're getting runoff, water is still continuing to come in. Creek mouths have not been worth a darn for the most part this year because it's been so incredibly dry. But if you get into creek mouths, those are good spots for just about any fish species, and flatheads are no exception. Bank or notch points, again, this is typically a high water condition like we don't have right now, but if you have a bank notch or you have a point that sticks out on a bank, that's going to deflect current. A lot of times you'll see this, we've got a lot of railroad companies that are running next to the Minnesota, Mississippi, and St. Croix River. They're dumping riprap. The riprap itself offers spawning habitat for flathead catfish and channel catfish, but it also works to armor those banks. And a lot of times it'll accumulate in a big pile and it'll create sort of a point that sticks off the bank. And on the backside of that point is slack water. So any sort of notch or point on the backside can be a great place to look for a flathead that's trying to hide out and get out of the current. Later in the season, which we're already into late season based on the kind of flow and stage we have, pools. We're looking for deep water. If the flatheads have to come out of snags and find other places to seek refuge and their snags are left high and dry, they're going to head for deep water pool habitat. You can run over with a down or side imaging unit of sonar and you can actually see those fish hanging out. So you will start to see them in pools. So later in the season, I like to fish the top side of a pool, maybe the back side of a pool, see if I can pull one of those flatheads out to inspect my bait. And pinch points are a great late season location. I'm already starting to see this right now in the end of June, fishing pinch points. What I mean by that is the wetted width of the rim of the river becomes so constricted, things get so low, like the conditions we have on the river systems right now, that they have to go through these areas that are very narrow. If you can fish in a pinch point when the fish are moving and foraging and looking for food, you're just going to by default get a lot of fish to come through a small area and you can pick up flatheads and pinch points. We'll switch over to channel catfish for a minute. Year-round locations, snags, for the same reason. You know, they want current breaks, current breaks, but also you're going to see fish that are focused on that current seam where the current gets deflected by a snag and pushed out. There'll be a lot of channels working their way along those edges of the snags. Creek mouths, for the same reasons we kind of talked about with the flathead catfish, they're just good places for those fish to forage and find food coming in. It's kind of like a conveyor belt. Now, when we talked about current seams with flatheads, we really emphasized fishing on the slow or slack side. When you're fishing current seams for channel catfish, you really want to be fishing on the fast side. These are fish, again, that are hanging out in the main channel for the most part, swimming around looking for their food or waiting for it to come to them. So putting your bait on the fast side means you're going to toss it out there and it's going to settle into a place in the current. It's going to send a lot of that scent downstream. So pitch out to the middle of the channel and let your bait sort of fall into naturally where it needs to be. It'll settle out where the weight's going to finally pin it down and hold it. Substrate changes are a great place to find channel catfish. I think as we go out with electrofishing boats and sample these fish, you'll see them on these substrate changes. They might be up on a gravel bar looking for food that's spilled out. They might be up on a sandy point bar. Anywhere that you're seeing these sort of substrate changes. And the river's always going through the same cycle that repeats over and over. Run, riffle, glide, pull. It's whether you're talking about a small first order stream or a seventh order major river, you're going to always see that same repeatable pattern that occurs along a stream or river. So if you can start to read that water and read those changes, you can find out where those substrates may change as well with the stream type. And there's just going to be more active fish in those mid-channel locations. All right, so to close things off, I just have a couple final points before we open things up for questions. If you do want to give catfish angling on Minnesota's rivers a try, you can find tons of information at mndnr.gov. There's a Metro Rivers guide there. There's a 4-part Minnesota River access map with the whole state water trail mapped out, shows you all the access locations as well as shore fishing areas. Another thing you'll need to do as an introductory catfish angler is become familiar with the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration or National Weather Service or the USGS, U.S. Geological Survey teams, hydrographs. Basically, these are the outputs for how high or low the water is and how weak or strong the flow is. You're going to learn to read these hydrographs and what they mean, and then as you experience them firsthand for yourself out on the water, start to rationalize how they work for you and understand what they mean for the conditions you're going to fish in. And you can kind of pick your battles, pick when you want to fish, you know, what if it's too high or too low, what those thresholds are, but start reading those hydrographs. You will also be able to find some more information by calling your local fisheries offices. You're going to want to call around. You know, they are going to have the most up-to-date information on the different stretches of river that you're interested in. You can also learn more about lake resources. And lastly, don't be intimidated. You know, it's hard to get into something like this where the gear is bigger, the fish are bigger, you're out on a river that's wild, and you may be intimidated about running into something. Start slowly. Go upstream, invest in a good set of lights for your boat, have a good headlamp if you're a shore angler, you know, or if you're a boat angler for that matter, but don't be intimidated. Start slowly. With that, I'll open it up for some questions.
Great job, Scott. That was awesome. I kind of want to get out and go catfishing now. So we had quite a few questions coming in. I just had one from Tara I saw pop up that, and you covered it a little bit on the flathead bites when you talk about them coming up and having that big pop when they're sucking the water in and the bait in. But she was wondering kind of specifically when you're using J hooks on, you know, when do you start setting the hook and increase your chance of landing the fish?
All right, so this is the $1,000,000 question. I just took a friend of mine out who had never flathead catfished in that person's life, and they proceeded to go. They fished for about everything. Very experienced angler, and over 2 nights they proceeded to go 0 for 4. There were long runs that the bait would go peeling out on. There were short pickups and thumps. The best advice that I can give is just basically showing some patience. You can give the fish too much time if they can work the bait off the hook. But in the case of flatheads, a lot of times I like to take it out of the rod holder, give it slack line so it doesn't feel any resistance, then reel up the slack line. And when I feel weight or some movement that's larger than the bullhead or live bait that I have on, then I'm setting the hook and I'm giving it everything I have because they have a tough mouth and I want to drive that hook home. Hook sets are free. It may turn into the bait. I may miss the fish, but for me, it's hard to take away that satisfaction of driving that hook home, and that's part of the fun of it. And it's a learning process. There's ups and downs with it. I can remember awful runs I had where I missed hooking up fish, you know, 5, 10 in a row, and it just broke your heart because you may not get that many bites in a night or over a course of several weeks. But it's really an experiential thing. The best advice I give is if you feel the weight, set the hook. You want to be patient and give them a little bit of time, but you don't want to give them too much time.
Great. You also covered a little bit talking about your bait, you know, catching bullheads and using those for bait. What's the good way to hook that bullhead on? Do you go by the mouth or by the back or tail or?
So I use a couple of different landmarks. That's a great question. There may be differences of opinion. I know I've seen a few catfish anglers that'll put them through the mouths. The landmarks that I look for are this. I'm going to go from the dorsal fin all the way back to the caudal fin and go halfway between the two. And then I'm going to go from the lateral line, which is the midpoint of the body and roughly aligned with the spine, to the top of the fish. So if you can look for those two landmarks as far as your east-west and your north-south, pierce that bait, run it through so you've got enough flesh on the top side and muscle that's not going to pull out, but you're not so far down that you're close to the spinal cord of the bullhead and paralyzing it. So you want to be careful when you're hooking it about going about halfway between those landmarks.
Oh, that's great information. So Brian was asking about depths. Is there depths that are too shallow, too deep? What's the most common deep water that they're available in?
So we talked about the flatheads, and they generally seek shallower, they generally seek slower or more slack water. However, there's, it sort of depends is the answer. Many times of the year I'm fishing shallower water inside of 10 feet for flatheads. Yet later in the year, if all their habitat is high and dry and all that's available is pool habitat, I might be sticking a bullhead down in 20 feet of water and still catching flatheads down there. So it sort of depends. The depth to me isn't as important as how does the spot look when I'm reading the water. Is there a lot of slack for the flatheads? Is it fast for the channels? That sort of thing.
Another question asking about quick strike rigs. You ever use those in your catfishing?
I haven't. I am familiar with them from ice fishing circles and putting them on tip ups, and musky anglers use them. Conceivably, you could use those, as long as they're hooked up onto the bait, they would work. Yeah, you could potentially use them. I just choose not to. I don't really, because I'm catching and releasing flatheads, I don't really want to put a bunch of treble hooks into them just in case they swallow the bait. You could potentially have some more mortality.
Hey, interesting question too. Somebody asked about, are catfish schooling fish? Do they school up, or, and you mentioned a little bit about winter habitat for the flatheads, but
So the channels will definitely school up at times. At other times, especially larger adults are more solitary. Flatheads, for the most part, are solitary. That doesn't mean that they're not found together. As we're electrofishing, snag piles will turn up, dozens of flatheads, but it's just because they're competing to use the same habitat. It's not that they're purposefully hanging out together. I would definitely say throughout the life history or throughout the year that flatheads are solitary. They just so happen to cohabitate in some of the same spots. Channels, on the other hand, are more of a schooling fish, particularly at younger sizes and ages. Once they get older, as they become more piscivorous, they're definitely more solitary.
and I kind of noticed during your presentation, and Jesse asked you a great question about handling the fish, and sometimes the flatheads you handle a little bit different than the channel cats. What's the best, I guess, policy or best way to handle both of the species and
Great
differences?
question. Great question. We are our Minnesota Department of Natural Resources Catfish Technical Committee is putting the finishing touches on a video that's covering catfish handling, large fish handling guidance. But basically, in short, for channel catfish, if they're particularly large, you want to keep them more vertical, or excuse me, more horizontal. You can get away with holding them vertically, but as they get larger, you just don't want their gut and their weight, their bellies to sort of distend and potentially injure any internal organs. But with a flathead, grab a hold of the lower jaw and then support the belly. That's typically the best way, and it does provide some really nice pictures. You get to see the colors, and you can kind of push the belly out, and they look real nice. So
I'm sure I see a couple things popping in from the chat too, Craig. So if you have a couple questions there, pop in. I had one more. I forget who asked it here, if it was Brian, or if you're catching your own bait, chubs or bullheads, what size are you aiming for? 4 or 5 inches or bigger?
honestly, I prefer as big as I can get, but a lot of times, that means that creek chub had to stay in that stream for more than a couple years. And as intense as some of the competition can be amongst catfish anglers in my neck of the woods, those spots can get fished out. But I'll take as big as I can get. Again, with the bullheads, that's up to 10 inches, and there isn't a limitation on the white suckers. There is or on suckers and catfish, or yeah, suckers. Excuse me. It's just part of that definition of what is a minnow and not, and getting into statute. But yeah, get as big as you can get, because yeah, you'd be surprised. Even really small flatheads can still take, a foot-long sucker. If they can get it in their mouth, they'll run with it.
And one more, both Barry and Tina, it looks like, and I was kind of interested in that too. You talked about the food quality of the catfish. Any good videos on cleaning them or tips on cleaning catfish that you'd recommend?
Well, we've got a former member of the Catfish Work Group Committee and fishing guide, Darren Troseth. If you go onto his YouTube page, he does have one of his most popular videos is how to clean a catfish. And there are some specialized equipment. This is a fish that does not have any scales. You will need to buy or use a pliers. They do sell skinning pliers, but you're pulling that skin off and then making cuts to fillet around the bones. You don't have to make it overly complicated. I mean, a lot of times I'll just gut the fish, remove the head, score the sides, put it in something to marinate, and then like milk or lemon juice, and then I'll batter it and fry it. So yeah, check out some of those YouTube videos if you want to learn more on how to fillet those fish.
Whose name did you just mention?
Darren Troseth.
Darren. Okay.
Yep, Darren was going to join me on this originally, but I know he had a conflict, and we ultimately decided I would cover most of this.
Craig, did you have any questions in the chat?
Nope, you covered that question that I can see there. Couple of questions just popped in about smaller rivers that were lakes for catfish. Any idea there, Scott?
You know, it really can be a ton of fun to do small river fishing, and they do provide a ton of opportunities. I'm thinking of the Cottonwood, the Blue Earth, boy, the Des Moines, the Cloquet, the St. Louis. There's so many. The Savannah. There's places all over. If there's a connected tributary that goes to the Minnesota or the Minnesota or the Mississippi or the Red, or you name it, basically any connection, you're going to have channel cats, and it can provide exceptional fishing. So you're going to want to get smaller gear. You know, that's the biggest thing. Smaller river, you're going to downsize some of your gear, but you can have a ball on smaller rivers catching catfish. I know a number of folks that get out across southern and western Minnesota and have a ton of fun on small rivers chasing catfish.
Great. It looks like we're just about out of time. We had like a minute left. So there was a couple specific locations. Mark asked about a place in Long Prairie. I don't know if you're familiar with good places to try catfishing up in that area.
The last piece of advice I would have, if you're in the Long Prairie area, I believe that's the Little Falls area station. It's kind of what I said a little bit earlier in my closing slides. There is a wealth of information. I work at one of those offices. You know, we get a few requests like this, but we love to help anglers out where they should go, or what they, you know, if you have a question about a specific water body, lake or stream or whatever, there's a lot of information out there that we can provide to you and give you good suggestions on where to go. So utilize that opportunity to engage with the fisheries staff, and in turn, you know, we've got good information. You can use it to your benefit.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. We're running out of time, so hope everybody enjoyed the program. It's going to be a beautiful weekend, it looks like, out there. So like Scott said, it's getting towards late in the season. He gave some great tips to get out there and try some catfish, and I hope everybody gets out and enjoys it. So thanks so much, Scott, for attending and doing the great presentation. So
thanks, everyone.
Have a good weekend, everybody. Pop us back